People really bought into Roman citizenship. This is a classical kingdom membership, an identity with your citizens. It's civitas, your people. And that gave Rome unprecedented power and longevity. It was like a weapon, the offer to fight for Rome. If you fought for Rome, Rome would make you the citizen. And it's not just you, it's your whole family forever. In the old times, barbarians wanted to join the genius of the old Roman ways. But now it's the late 300s. The offer is dying. This is the lesson about barbarian border breach and the fall of Rome. But it's more than just barbarians at the gate. Rome no longer means what it once did. Fewer are defending the gates. So when the next barbarians reach the border, they don't want to join. They want to dictate terms. And I want to introduce you to the barbarians. I'm Mr. Holt. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where history reveals truth and wisdom for your journey. Now you're with the barbarians going across the borders. Who are the barbarians? There are lots of different groups of them. And what are they seeing on the inside as Rome is falling? And what happens? What is the result of this so that we can learn the lesson? I want to give you a piece of the past. It's worth learning from the fall of Rome, so that by the end, you'll know what the barbarians did, and you can feel like a barbarian looking for their own kingdoms, but it's a kingdom without the falling Romans. Let's begin. This is part of the series of lessons on the fall of Rome. It takes centuries. There are many factors that go into this. We picture Rome like a great hero. They lasted 1,000 years, so strong, building aqueducts and the Pantheon. Every nation on earth would recognize the power of Rome. But even a mighty hero cannot last forever. And so when the hero falls, we have to we autopsy. The historians autopsy this all the time. It is one of the favorite topics of students loving the application. So I want to make you a classical scholar. You should know the reasons for the fall of Rome. First, it's when the body splits, the political weakness. From lesson 68, we covered division, weak leadership. The empire was divided east and west. The leaders fought each other. It's a body at war. And that political weakness is one of the reasons. Number two, the body is penetrated, the skin breaks, the barbarian invasions. This is lesson 69. They're the newcomers to this place that are not interested in being Roman. The Roman military couldn't stop it. They couldn't manage their borders, and Rome was unable to convert these outsiders into being Roman. So barbarian invasions, the second reason. The third, in lesson 70, economic problems. It's like the thinning blood, the thinning money, the thinning economy, the anemic economy, really. It's going to bleed the empire dry. That is your lifeblood. Number 4 will be the death. We'll look at the year AD 476, when the last of the Western government of Rome, the last emperor, was gone. That is the end. The heartbeat of Rome is gone. Important lessons to consider and compare to America, and what does continue, because the Roman legacy, Western civilization, is obviously very important and powerful. The fifth reason, it's the hidden disease. We'll cover that in lesson 72. A disease that you want to cure, a disease you want to stop from spreading. So we'll save that for lesson 72 and apply that to places like the United States of America. But in our lessons, the hero Roma, isn't dead yet. We are in the 300s, AD 300s. The heart is still beating. We've had some ups and downs. The hero is a bit wounded. And today's lesson is the barbarian border breach, the wounds that we are taking from the invasions. Let's check on the borders. The Rhine in the west. It's a river. The Danube River in the east. These are big rivers. These are really good natural boundaries. There's thousands of miles of water. For hundreds of years, the Romans have been building watchtowers, forts, road systems to get you there. So behind that border is a huge and successful Roman Empire. The eastern field, the eastern side, has 350,000, maybe 389,000 soldiers guarding it with 1.44 million gold solidi. Money coming in every single year. The East is wealthy. That was the Constantine lessons. You've been coming here from lesson 65. We've seen the power and the strength of Rome compared to the West, which is just a small fraction, not taking as much money in. But when Roman times are good, the Romans can engineer all these amazing things. The Pantheon was the unreinforced concrete dome. It's still standing today, 142 feet across. It's nearly half a football field. And the water systems are still going strong. The Aqueduct of Valens, 250 miles long. That's going to get you from New York to Washington, D.C. And the Arch of Constantine, another one of my favorites, that's 7 stories tall. So this was once quite the hero. And their defense strategy, they had been expanding for so long, they stopped expanding. Now they need to defend. But they need more than just soldiers alone. So they did it with inclusion, with identity, the patriotism. If you go back to Emperor Claudius, that's AD 48, he stood before the Senate. They were enraged. They argued about these wealthy Gauls, the grandsons of the men who had killed Roman legionaries. Julius Caesar helped subdue Gaul and take it over for the Romans. And now Claudius wants Gauls to sit in the Senate. In the Senate means they would be Roman. We know this because his exact words survive on a massive bronze plaque in Lyon, France. It's still there today for the common man. The army. The army could give you a diploma. Have you heard of a diploma? A non-citizen could serve 25 years in the army and walk out with a diploma. 2 plates of bronze, bound with wire. Here's a real artifact of one. This is granting citizenship to him and his children, his family forever. Rome issued more than 300,000 of these diploma. Every diploma stripped the frontier of one more tribal loyalty and replaced it with Roman loyalty. That's a machine. That's the Roman machine, making converts, bringing society, bringing civilization. But it changed in AD 212. Emperor Caracalla had an edict, citizenship for nearly every free person in the empire, covering 3 continents in one signature. He gave it to everyone. Was that generosity? It was partly generosity. It also let him double his income tax, his inheritance tax specifically, a tax that only citizens would have to pay. And he doubled it from 5% to 10%. Now everyone is supposed to pay this. Do you see a problem with that? I want to make you a classical scholar. Do you see any issue if everyone is a citizen, if everyone is just handed citizenship, what's left to earn about it? Especially the way they were defending their country first and then receiving citizenship. So now we're in this crisis in the 3rd century. The Senate has recognized 26 emperors. This is coming after Caracalla. In 49 years, we averaged about 2 years per emperor. It's very unstable. The silver coinage has collapsed. They're just barely washing silver over top of it. They're having a lot of problems. They are all interrelated. So Rome is struggling. Let's go check in on the men guarding the border. Who is stopping the barbarians? Emperor Valens is one. He's in the east. Still on the same team. Emperor Valens is ambitious, and he really wants a victory of his own. Lupicinus and Maximus are the Roman commanders on the Danube. The Danube, they were known as notoriously wicked. And across the river, let's meet a barbarian, a leader of the Goths, Fritigern. Fritigern's a barbarian, and that makes him, from the old Greek word barbaroi, it makes him a non-Greek speaker, a non-Latin speaker. He's literally across the river. Fritigern, leader of the barbarian Goths. Well, in the AD 370, something comes off from the flat grasslands, terrifying, even to the very tough barbarian Goths. It's the Huns. You've heard of Attila the Hun. They are pushing to the west, and they are startling and scaring the barbarians. The Roman historian Marcellinus, he says that they lived on horseback and they scarred their infant son's cheek with a hot iron. They're tough, they're swift, they're strong, and the Goths don't stick around. They push, they march on Rome. They run to Rome. The Huns are threatening and the Goths are pushing. And by AD 376, 90,000 Goths, that's men, women, and children, are piled up on the north bank of the swollen Danube River. They're begging Valens, Emperor Valens, for asylum. So that's like a full stadium, a Big Ten stadium. All of them are refugees. We've got a food crisis. They're starving. Valens says, yes, you can cross the border. He thinks that they could be farmers. Empty land needs farmers. They could be recruits for the army. Day and night, as they're coming over, boats, rafts, any way that they can cross the Danube, this is a mass migration. But Lupicinus, Maximus, had a different idea. You know, the emperor had sent grain over. It's been sent ahead for the refugees. But it sat locked in the warehouses while Lupicinus and Maximus sold that food back at famine level prices. Acting as Romans, the emperor's grain was something they were just making money off of now. Marcellinus records what he calls the Turpe Commercium, that is the shameful trade, because the commanders started rounding up dogs from the countryside and were trading meat, dog meat, to the starving Gothic parents, trading them. What were they trading them for? The price of one dog was one child to be handed over in slavery. One dog, one child. This is the Roman success strategy in 376. Then Lupicinus tries to murder Fritigern at a banquet. And that is when things snapped. Fritigern escaped. Refugees armed themselves, and this was in Thrace. Thrace began to burn. Now watch this on August 9th, AD 378, one of the famous dates to remember, because this is outside of Adrianople, the Battle of Adrianople. Valens refuses to wait for reinforcements. He thinks these are just, barbarians, disorganized. He wants this quick victory for himself. The Goths are dug in behind a fortress of carts and wagons, and on a hill under a blazing sun, the Roman discipline cracks the lines, kind of go in half-formed, very lacking discipline. Then the Gothic cavalry comes back like a thunderbolt off of a mountain. The legions are packed so tight that men can't even raise their sword arms. Dust is blotting out the sky, and in that kind of blindness and confusion of a fight, 2/3 of the entire eastern field of the army is slaughtered. Valens dies somewhere in the chaos. His body is never found. Historian Marcellinus reaches back 600 years for a comparison. Do you know which one it is? If you're coming here from lesson 46, in the Punic Wars, it's the Battle of Cannae. Romans lost there too. Rome cannot expel 90,000 people that had just failed to destroy, failed to subdue. So in AD 382, the new emperor Theodosius signs a treaty. The Goths may settle inside the empire in Moesia, in Thrace, under their own leaders, their own laws, as one armed nation, so long as they fight for Rome. Be an ally. From 4 centuries now, Rome has always absorbed outsiders. But now, for the first time, they've got an armed, unabsorbed nation living inside the heroic body of the old Rome. 12 years later, Rome cashes that treaty, September 5th and 6th in AD 394. That's the Battle of Frigidus. Theodosius throws his Gothic friends first into that fortified Alpine pass against, it's like a usurper's army. 10,000 Goths die in just 2 days. And among those survivors is a young Gothic commander, Alaric, you've heard about, lesson 68 with the Emperor Honorius. But if you're coming here from Classical Kingdoms, the Ancient History Survey book, the 30 lessons, that's lesson 25, Alaric. And that survey book is really good. It's a good homeschool entry point for middle school students with the gap, high school students. If you're new to ancient history, the link is in the description. But Alaric was just a child in the earlier part of this lesson. Remember the refugees at the Danube River. Now Alaric is serving Rome. And he's asking to be a Roman officer, or to have a status like a Roman officer, like a general's rank, to be magister militum. He was denied. And what would you do if you were Alaric? You've been loyal to Rome. You've had a very difficult struggle. You've got a choice here. Do you press this claim? Is it reasonable? You want land. You want a rank. You want the promise that was made in that treaty. And how far do you press for that? So for now, Alaric is going to go easy. He's going to keep petitioning and waiting patiently. But over time, you can, to a point, you can forgive rudeness, but contempt becomes much more difficult because as Rome continues to say no to Alaric, no. And the East refusing Alaric, the West is losing its entire frontier, losing control of everything. In December of AD 406, the Rhine at Mainz, we've got Vandals, we've got Alans, we've got the Suebi. There's a new barbarian group for this lesson, the Suebi. There's tens of thousands of different barbarian ethnic groups. 3 major migrations are converging at one weak point. They're going to cross the river, they're going to go. And you may have heard in lesson 68 that the river had frozen solid. It was just really easy. This is like historian Edward Gibbon is saying this is the way it is. And this is how I was taught, but other sources say it wasn't frozen and it could be far worse because the point is nobody is stopping these barbarians. the scholar Jerome. Jerome is most famous for translating the Bible into Latin in the local high school that I coach golf at. Shout out to the Celts. But he's writing all the way down in the Holy Lands, watching what's going on here. He's listing the damage of the barbarian border breach, that Mainz was seized and overturned. Thousands were murdered in their own church. Then in Worms, Strasbourg, this Gaul region is anarchy. It's like an unrecognizable body of the old hero, the Rome we once knew. But Alaric is still frustrated. He's done petitioning and he sees a weakness, sees an opportunity. In AD 408, Alaric marches his veterans down Italy, puts the city of Rome under siege. Rome, that's where Constantine won at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. He used to feed 80,000 people free bread every single day. Right now, the place is starving. Roman ambassadors, they try to bluff. They say, oh, we've got so many citizens, you're going to get wiped out. Alaric laughs. Thicker the hay, the easier mode is the quote. So, okay, Alaric, what are you offering us? Your lives. I'll let you guys live. What are you demanding from us? Because we will pay it now. Well, the Senate pays 5,000 pounds of gold, 2.5 tons. That's 30,000 more pounds of silver, 15 tons, 4,000 silk tunics, 3,000 scarlet hides, 3,000 pounds of pepper, 1.5 tons of spice. Notice I'm not giving you money values. The Roman money is not worth it. They were treasuring these commodities, but now the treasury is empty. They have stripped the temples. They have melted down the statue of Virtus. That's the goddess of valor. Another historian, Zosimus, wrote that when Virtus went into the fire, whatever remained of Roman courage went with her. 40,000 slaves flee the city and join with Alaric. How are slaves allowed to abandon their masters? Is there no law that's being enforced? Alaric is offering a greater structure, and slaves are escaping and joining Alaric. Honorius, we learned in lesson 68, he's hiding in his palace in Ravenna, and he still refuses what Alaric is asking for. So on the night of August 24th in AD 410, someone on the outside, most likely rebellious slaves, they quietly open the Salarian Gate. The Salarian Gate, for the first time, symbolic, because it's been 800 years since a band of Gauls had penetrated the walls of Rome. That was in 390 BC. No foreign enemies inside Rome. This sack lasts for 3 days. Now, Alaric's Goths are Christian, and they honor the sanctuary, which means if you are taking sanctuary inside St. Peter's Basilica, St. Paul's Basilica, those people were spared. The safest ground in Rome is a church that's guarded by the barbarians to be protected and kept safe. Meanwhile, how is Constantine's legacy? How is Constantinople doing? All the treasure is safe. You know, the hippodrome, the serpent column inside the hippodrome. This is the old capital of Rome being picked clean. The new capital of Rome is fine. Now, so go back to Alaric. What if you are Alaric and you've watched it? In your lifetime, you watched children being traded for dog meat. You've buried 10,000 of your own at the Frigitus, and you've now been paid tons of silver. And you're still being denied a place in the Roman Empire. You've got a choice. We need Aristotle for this one. We've got justice. He's looking for justice. Submission, vengeance, or justice is in the middle of those if we weigh it like Aristotle does. You fall short of justice, you've got submission, and you could march away. You could teach Rome that a Goth can be starved, cheated, and whatever. That's not peace. If you overshoot the justice and turn this into vengeance, you take more than what is owed, more than what the deal is, more than everything that you can carry. That is not the virtue that sits in the middle of justice. Take the claim, the land, the grain, the rank, the authority, because, you want your classical kingdom, just minus the Romans. They're out. They're falling. Where do you think Alaric lands on this? When you have been truly wronged and you finally hold the power to answer back, do you take the justice, what you were owed, or do you go beyond that in an imbalanced way? A lesson. But back to the Romans, the fallout is immediate. The engine that we started this lesson with, it's dead. The citizenship. And now armed autonomous nations are inside what used to be the body of the Roman borders. They're never going to leave. It's the future lesson about how countries in Europe are going to develop. Across the sea in Bethlehem, the scholar Jerome, working on his biblical commentaries, he writes about what just happened. He writes that the city which had taken the whole world was itself now taken. That's Jerome's. But there's an interesting work called The City of God. That's the civitas of God, the citizenship of God. This is by Augustine of Hippo. And he writes that earthly cities are formed by the love of self, even to the contempt of God. The heavenly city, the citizenship, is formed by the love of God, even to the contempt of self. He writes an entire work about this crash, burn, the breach, the Alaric rampage. And would you say that Rome was an earthly city formed by the love of self, even to the contempt of God? The City of God by Augustine of Hippo. It's a time for you to think. What is citizenship? Citizenship that lasts. What do you think about that topic, and how would you apply it? Go back to the diploma, the 2 plates of bronze, the promise. Serve and you will belong. To the city, the civitas, the Latin word that means citizenship, where we get the word city. Rome fell where it stopped keeping the promise. Barbarians at the gate wasn't that big of a problem, except that there weren't enough people willing to stop them with the identity to defend the citizenship. Rome fell, not quite 2,000 years ago, but the lesson doesn't, and that's what makes a kingdom classical. It all connects. All this coursework, interactive book, it's all waiting for you at classicalkingdoms.com, because like the way the fall of Rome, all those different reasons are interacting over time, so also are classical lessons from the birth of civilization to the fall of Rome. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history. And that includes your journey, because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.